In my personal studio workflow, I like to separate the production process from the mixing process from the mastering process. And I didn't always used to do it this way. In fact, when I started producing and mixing, I used to always try to do both at the same time. I would mix while I produce. And over time, as I got better at both producing and mixing, I found that I got better results, better sounding music, and it was just easier mentally to produce first, focus on production, mix next, focus on mixing, and then master last and focus on the mastering. This video is sort of intended for people who haven't really figured out their workflow yet. And maybe if you're doing production and mixing all at once at the same time, it might be just biting off more than you can chew with too many options, too many variables, too many things to dig into and change without really having a clear idea of how to solve the problems you're having. Most professional engineers think about the processes separately. The production and recording process is one phase, the mixing process is another phase, the mastering process is the last phase. And that's kind of how it was always done in the music industry. If you go back a few decades, those were three different roles played by three different people. The producer was a separate person from the recording engineer, who was a separate person from the mixing engineer, who was a separate person from the mastering engineer. And it was only with the advent of digital audio and DAWs and working with software that those lines kind of blurred, and now we have a landscape in music where one person can do all those things or many of those things. And there's nothing wrong with doing many of those things, having like a broad skill set to finish records. That's kind of what's needed in today's music industry, is to have a broad skill set that if you're a producer, that you can mix and bring a record to its closest completion as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. But within that, I think it helps to kind of compartmentalize a production workflow, a mixing workflow, and a mastering workflow. If you do mix while you produce, I encourage you to kind of take a step back from that workflow and maybe try producing and mixing separately. I think you'll strengthen both of the skill sets if you do them separately. Then in the future, you can come back to doing both at the same time and you'll be better at both. So let me break down how I think about the different processes and what the benefits are of doing them separately. So let's start with production. So I think of producing a record in the modern age consists of picking sounds, picking parts, and working on the arrangement of the song form. So those three things are a giant task. To get those things right in a song can take, many hours or days or even weeks, as you probably know. And when I find the sounds that I like, I generally don't do much to them. I want to save my honing and processing of my sounds I've selected for the mixing stage. The main benefit of focusing on just the production is that you're going to work a lot faster. In one sitting, you might be able to get like the real seed, concentrated idea of a song, and maybe even finish a whole song. So when I'm producing, I'm always thinking of sounds, parts, and arrangement in that order. The first thing I do is always looking for sounds, right? So I'm imagining the sound that fits in the current production, and then I need to go find it. When I find it, then I need to focus on coming up with the right part with that sound that fits in the arrangement and that locks in with all the other layers that are happening in the production. Once I have the part in place, then I have to think about the structure of the song form, how this part leads to the next part, how this section evolves into the next one. Here's a production gem I want to give you. You can think about building out a production, you can think about it either vertically or horizontally, right? And think about this in the context of your DAW. So if I'm thinking vertically, that means I'm going to come up with one part. Let's say I create a Rhodes part, right? If I'm thinking vertically, I have a 4-bar Rhodes part, and then I'm going to imagine all the other layers that are going to exist in that 4 bars of music. So that could be all my drum sounds, bass, vocal samples, synths, keys. That's like stacking a full production so that this section sounds done. That's like vertical stacking of layers. So you can work vertically or you can work horizontally, which would mean you come up with that first Rhodes part, and instead of stacking layers on top of that Rhodes part and spending all the time making that section complete, I'm going to move on to the next section with my Rhodes, right? So that would mean I'd figure out maybe the whole verse progression, and then instead of filling out more layers, I'm going to move on and figure out what are the changes in the pre-chorus. Where does the song form go next? So if I work horizontally, I could basically write the entire arrangement in song form just on that one road sound for the duration of the entire song. And then, to me, that's always kind of the hard part, right? If I can figure out the horizontal arrangement over time, the 3-minute song, then stacking out all of the layers underneath that are actually much easier. I think most producers have a much easier time imagining layers on top of layers than they do imagining an entire arrangement for a song. So for years, my tendency was just to build vertically, to build layers and layers and layers, and then maybe I'd spend 4 hours just like producing a verse, and then next time I sat down, I wouldn't know what to do next. Like, what is the chorus going to be? I would be kind of stumped. But when you work horizontally, in your first sitting with the song, you basically can knock out the entire changes, chords for the whole song and the whole arrangement. And then next time you sit down, you're just going to be filling in layers underneath that. It's actually a much easier process, in my opinion. So I know my production is near done when I have filled out the entire horizontal arrangement of the song and all the vertical layers. So it doesn't feel empty anywhere in the song. It feels like there's enough happening throughout, enough layers to give the song kind of energy and release of energy. And the structure of the song makes sense, and it sounds like something that is a journey, is a story. And if it's a journey, if the production is a journey unto itself, then that's going to make it easier to write to for vocalists, for artists. I find vocalists and writers have an easier time writing when the production tells a complete story, because they can just kind of follow your lead as far as like the growth and the release of your whole song and come up with a story that fits that. So one way I distinguish between my production phase and my mixing phase is I'm actually working in 2 different DAWs. So my production is happening all in Ableton, because I think Ableton is the best flexible tool for how I think about music. And for me, mixing, I'd rather mix in Pro Tools. I think the Pro Tools DAW for the way I think about mixing is a better fit. So that creates a nice mental shift for me to export all my production stems out of Ableton and drop them into Pro Tools, build a new session, organize it the way I organize all my Pro Tools sessions, the way I organize my mixes. And then I'm one step closer to listening more for mixing. And most of the time, once I'm in Pro Tools, ready to mix, I almost never go back to Ableton and swap sounds out or rearrange. But I do keep changing and crafting my sounds within Pro Tools. I keep editing. But I really am a fan of committing to your sounds and committing to a direction and not giving yourself the opportunity to backtrack too much. I don't want to be in the habit of like always changing my mind, always having the option to go back and redo things, because that's more time consuming and it's more mentally draining, and it's just more confusing for me wanting to finish a record. So once I'm in Pro Tools and I'm mixing, I try to mix my own records in the same way that I mix someone else's record, where I'm just listening as objectively as I can to the quality of the sounds that were selected, and opening plugins and processing those sounds so that they fit together optimally with all the other sounds in the arrangement. And to summarize mixing very simply, it's crafting your levels of all your layers, it's crafting your tones, and it is making the record just feel how it is intended to feel. It's really enhancing the quintessential emotions that were put into that record, and just really heightening them and making them more impactful. And when I'm mixing, I know that the record is going to be mastered afterwards as a separate process. Therefore, my mixes don't need to be insanely loud, or they don't even need to sound like radio ready, because that's what mastering is for. When I begin a mix, there's going to be a lot of things jumping out that stick out to me that bother me or sound unfinished or need to be addressed or tamed or enhanced. So I kind of keep running through all my layers and listening and assessing for how finished it sounds. And when I can listen to the whole record through and nothing bothers me, then I know I'm close to the end of a mix. So I print my final mix with some headroom. I'm not trying to make my mix as loud as possible. So that basically translates to me printing my mixes at the loudest at -14 on the integrated LUF scale. That gives me plenty of headroom for when I'm mastering to be able to make the record much louder. And I've found that when I try to master within my mix session, I can never get the record to sound as clear, as loud, and as finished as I do when I print a final mix instead, and then take a break from the song, walk away from the song, don't listen to it for ideally a few days, and then come back to it to master that song with completely fresh ears. And when I master a song, I want to open a blank new session with nothing in it and import the final mix, which is just a stereo 2-track, and then listen to it with fresh ears and assess the mix and make the adjustments and processing necessary so that that mix is enhanced and sounds finished and ready for release. And kind of like in production and mixing, my goal with the master is I don't want to go back to the mix and like dive deep into the mix and fix things in the mix, because I've already done that. I've already brought the mix to its highest level that I can get it to. So the master is to bring it to the next stage from that point forward. And if you like what I have to say about producing, mixing, mastering, I want to tell you about my private coaching programs for producers, engineers, and artists. Please feel free to book a free consultation call with me, and we could talk about the projects you're working on, the problems you're having with those projects, and the goal you want to get to. One of my programs is called the Personalized Song Feedback, and that's basically where we have 2 video meetings. The first one, you show me a record you're working on, and I basically listen to it and assess it from a production, mixing, and recording standpoint. I'll be very specific about the things you can do to make the record better, and then you're going to go off and do those things. And then a week later, we'll meet again for our second call, and you'll show me the revised version. We'll see your progress, and I'll help you bring that record to the finish line. I have a more extensive 6-week program called Finish Your Music, and this is for people who want to work on a whole project with me sort of advising how to finish the project the most efficiently. This can be just a single song, or it can be an EP, or it can be an album. I can help you create a project planner that helps you stay organized and stay on task. And most importantly, I can give you firm deadlines and firm ways to finish your music. If this all sounds like something you are interested in, find the links below. Hit me up if you want to chat about how we can work together. And I hope this is valuable, and peace.